Hello, this is Yana.
And this is Jessie.
We are excited to be back with another episode. We wrestled through many different questions, but today we wanted to invite you and have a little discussion about TCK guilt when it comes to service. So, welcome and join us at
At
the
the
table.
table, I
Oh
don't.
man.
Sorry, what did you say?
I just said, oh man.
I know I was about to say, I don't even know where to start because this topic is very heavy. And I think it's hard for me to know where to start because I feel very convicted while processing this and sharing this. And so, just a heads up that this is still an unprocessed conversation topic, but
Yes,
we're just going to go for it. And Yana made a good point that this is going to be an episode where it's a maturing thing, like as we grow and develop, that it's going to be more of a through life experience
for
type of
sure.
topic. So the topic is TCK or missionary guilt. And so, what do we mean by that? I think an easy way to kind of explain this is, for example, service. When we are a part of a church and we have seen our parents serve as missionaries in whatever capacity, whether that's in a church or in a community, and because we have seen them serve at certain in certain ways and have been recognized for that, we automatically kind of, and again, this is Yana and I speaking from our experience, but we automatically kind of put that same pressure on ourselves to do that.
Right.
And so now that we're in our own communities and relationships, we still feel that pressure to be the first ones to serve in a certain capacity or in a certain way. And when we don't, or we don't feel convicted in that way,
Or
we
try not
feel,
to be.
or try not to be, or try to run the opposite way, we feel convicted. And we're like, oh, why do we feel that way? And
Mm.
what is feeling like, are we feeling convicted by God or are we feeling pressured and feeling guilt? So we're going to break that down for you guys. Yana, start us off. Where is your thought process with all of this? And what are some of the experiences you've gone through with this whole missionary guilt?
Like Jesse said, I don't even know where to start because the lines feel so blurry to me. So, like, I wrote down just like the blurry line between conviction, a pride, and shame. And also because both Jesse and I were the eldest, and even though like our parents might not be this like Michael Jackson famous person, but at least in the missional world, they have least a certain reputation. And obviously, that comes with so many blessings, but also as the eldest, because we were at the forefront of what that looks like, I feel as though a lot of that pressure sometimes translates into our own responsibility because I've also been asked, oh, since your parents, did NK stuff, are you going to go back and live? Obviously, for me, I would love to visit because it's my home. But then, of course, there's that underlying question of, are you going to be the next best missionary? Kind of. So, with that in mind, now that I'm in a church community and missional conversations are brought up, I can't help but have an opinion about it. And also, how can I contribute? And because of my opinion, it's so hard to integrate in it properly. And obviously, that comes from a place of pride. But then also when, for example, when children's ministry, there's always a need for that. And when they're always asking, or especially if they find out I'm a teacher and they come to me personally, it's so hard to draw a line with that because I feel I'm directly rejecting something that the Lord has gifted me with. You know what I mean? So there's just a lot of things there's no clear answer I can have, and my brain is even before we even started click record, we were like, okay, we need to write something down. Ended up writing pretty much nothing down because we didn't know where to even begin with this. But essentially, I think what I struggled with when it came to those things really started with the pride and shame narrative because I felt I could feel the pride creeping in because their perspective on mission or worldview was very different from mine. And that immediately felt like I was like telling someone older than me or someone of more authority that they're wrong. And I felt really ashamed that I even had that type of thought. And so my unfortunate thing would be that I would try not to be involved at all. I didn't want to be involved in communities where I had a voice or could have a voice, or just didn't want to be involved in that much capacity because I was afraid of my own thoughts and also the ways I could and not influence people. And I just hated that icky feeling that I had a thought about what this church should do. And so that I think for me was my biggest struggle. So more than like a tangible service that I felt pressured to do, it was the conversations that would go around within the church and therefore not wanting to be part of that community because I felt there would be a pressure on me to bring about an opinion because they're like, you're a missionary kid, you did this for so many years. Tell me about your story. And then I'd feel very I would hate that feeling of responsibility, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Am I even making sense right now?
No, thanks for unloading all of that. It gives us a good starting point. I'm like, there's a couple things that I'm like, oh, let's point that out. Number one, I like how you acknowledged, and we didn't even discuss this, but I love how you acknowledged that being the oldest already puts that responsibility.
Mm,
And so that kind of doubled being a missionary kid and being in spotlight. And it's just all this like representing well. And we've talked about this before, but I like how you mentioned that because that also plays a factor. I also like that you mentioned because of all of that pride, like you rather just not be involved at all. And it makes sense why so many people turn or don't think that church is a necessary part of being a Christian or having faith. I know a lot of missionary kids that are like that. And honestly, myself included, for a short period of time, I was like, being in community is messy and some parts of it upset me. And
exactly.
it's just like not worth being a part of something where I could potentially have a say and influence.
Yeah.
So I totally, totally get what you're saying with that. And you're not
It,
crazy at all.
I just didn't like the feeling that I was getting. I'm like,
Mm.
"Ugh, I hate that I feel this way that why can't I enter into a community with a fresh like set of eyes and like a clear slate and just enter
Open
in as
mind.
yeah, open mind. Why am I felt so close-minded, judgy, and they had it was not necessarily because there was conflicting views of the Bible or like there was nothing like terrible. It was just I hated the idea that I had a say. I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, obviously at that point I'm like 18, 19, and like, what the heck? You have literally nothing to say. Just sit down and be quiet and listen. And because I hated that feeling, I didn't want to be in like Bible studies because in Bible studies they would talk about like their personal life, and it felt I hate. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna sound like a total terrible person, but like I felt so shallow like their worries and their prayer requests, and the pride would stab me.
I'm glad you said it first so that I don't have to say it first.
Okay, I said it. I'm gonna be the bad guy because like, but I hated that I had that feeling.
Right,
Like
right.
they were praying about gas prices. I'm like, okay, cool story. But now here I am, like, oh my God, the gas is so expensive. Lord, please bring it down. Like I because now I lived a life as an independent adult and have in some sense assimilated to the US culture, I understand why these things would be a worry and a genuine worry. But also disclaimer, I have a cold, so if I'm sniffling, I'm so sorry. But I think more than the idea of them talking, I love that they had a safe space for that. I hated the person I was in that
Right.
room.
And that is the missionary guilt that we're also hitting at too, is that we hate that we're feeling that way.
Yes,
Yeah,
because we know
totally.
it's wrong.
Right. Right.
Ooh, I just had a thought. Sorry, I'm talking too much. I think like as I'm processing, uh, I think that's why maybe I'm pushing too hard. Maybe I'm pushing it too hard, but I'm still gonna say it. Maybe that's why I love going to big churches because I'm the quiet person that no one needs to know. Anyway, that's the last thing.
Oh, I have so many things to talk about, like what you just said. Okay, wait. Let me connect the thing to what you were saying previously and then talk about the big church thing. Okay. I was gonna say I relate to what you said a lot, and thanks for sharing that. I was not expecting you to share that because that's not really what we were processing slash weren't
Bro.
processing. So then now when we hit record, all of this is spewing out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where to start? But I totally relate on the guilt part and feeling like the things that were being shared or all of that was something that I couldn't relate to. And
Mm,
for example, growing up, you witness your parents serving in a certain way,
mm,
and you have this idea. Again, missionary community is not perfect at all. Every church is broken, but you see, because we're on a mission field, doing more and talking more about spreading the gospel,
hmm.
really being desperate for people to be saved.
Yeah.
That's really the focus. And then maybe when you come to the States, like it's more about like healing and forgiveness. And those are all important things. It's just the urgency I did not feel in a lot of the churches that I went to.
Mm,
So because of that, it would frustrate me so much because I'm like, no, that's not what should be on our hearts, or that's not how we should be serving. And so me looking down or thinking that there's a better way to do it. I mean, already my personality is like that. So that's a double whammer for me. But that feeling made me feel disgusted at myself.
yes.
And that made me feel guilty of, man, I can just be in a community and just let myself marinate in something that's great that God also has provided and is facilitating. And yet, your pride and your missionary stuck upness has not allowed you to be a part of something that's great. You're missing out. You're hindering yourself. You're
Mm,
yourself. You yourself are your own stumbling block. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. And yeah, that just triggers me to a whole new level because
so
it's like, man,
true.
that is so frustrating because my intentions are there. Like, my intention is to really genuinely serve and know and to carry out what I think is service.
Right.
But
Yeah,
again, it's not always what you deem to be the best way to serve
it's so true.
or the best way to be a part of a community or whatnot. So, yes, relate to that. In terms of the big church, did I say everything before we can move on to the big church part?
Yes, yes. I mean, dude, that was you. That was all you, girl.
Oh, and the big church part is that can be a whole nother
Oh
episode.
my
So
gosh,
maybe
that's a
we
whole
can just
different.
lightly touch on it and then do another episode
Yes.
on it. But
Oh
man, because of that, sometimes it's just easier to be in a bigger church.
my
And
God, yeah.
honestly, from me in this past year, jumping from a big church to a smaller church, I'm just so much more frustrated of
Kudos
like,
to you, girl.
oh, I'm like, are these the things we should be talking about? Isn't there more? Are we praying about things around the world? Is our heart aching for the right things and right things
I
again?
know, yeah.
And it's so frustrating, but it's because like you're in such a closer knit intimate setting where you're having to have differences, you're having to like reveal those differences, talk through it. And so it's so much more messy, but it's so like worth it.
Mm,
But I'm getting to that like, oh, it's worth it part because I'm like, man, why can't I just worship God and have good service, good lighting, good message, call it a day, and it's just very great.
yes.
But that's the whole point. And so anyway, feeling guilty also that I need that relief.
Oh, ooh. You touched it. Ooh, my heart.
All right, the end.
The end. Okay, bye, guys. Oh man, that's the
Yikes.
guilt. That's the guilt for
Yikes.
me, is that I need relief. My parents pressed on for 20 something years. And here I am. I did what? One Sunday, and I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I need to go sleep now for another 2 hours. Thank you. Like, what the heck? I feel so pathetic. And but I like that you kept saying like I wanted to do the right thing. It's just like it goes back to a lot of our episodes where we talk about sometimes the right thing isn't the right thing. It's where
Right.
we need God's wisdom. And I think at least for me, where I get so stuck, and I can feel that right now as I'm transitioning out of this church and need to find a new church, is that I know the Lord wants me to pray and commune
Yeah.
with him and sit with him and really listen. What do I like? What does the Lord see as correct for me right now? Or like, what does he want me to lead into? For example, okay, I gotta say it, but like right now, I'm in a majority white church, a big church, and it's been nothing but a pouring into my spirit and a growth and a lot of obviously a lot of challenges too, but like overall, it was like a personal growth time. Because as I'm transitioning out, I'm having to now start over. I barely now made community and now I'm starting over. In my heart, my mom is like, maybe you should try again an Asian American church. Ooh, and my
Oof.
heart is not ready. And I know God really wants me to pray. But my dad has a joke. He always says, if you don't want it, don't pray about it. And TBH, that's what I've been doing. But I know the Lord is like, Yana, I'm here. Let's talk about this. Let's see how you can serve. No, thank you. I don't want that. Cancel. Anyway.
Oh, totally. And the thing is, growing up, all we've been a part of is that big chaotic mess of a Christian community. And so we know what that entails. And that's
Mm,
why we're so hesitant. We want to run the opposite way. And again, like being in a majority white church, it isn't the wrong move. Like that's
no,
just where God has called you to in that season.
true.
And so I guess just to like wrap everything up, like ultimately, it's like, are you listening to the convictions of God, or are
Mm,
you listening to your guilt and the pressure that you've put on yourself from your parents or your community? Like, which voice are you listening to and which master are you serving?
amen.
Because that will give you direction. And the thing is, if you are going against your convictions, that'll bring a different kind of guilt because you know that you haven't been obedient to God's calling and what God's tugging your heart to towards. So, yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, one more thing. And to say
Yes.
that, understanding that not all of your convictions are going to be the same convictions as another person. And that's something I've really had to reconcile with. And that's something we were
Amen.
talking about before the episode of like, oh, that we could literally rant on forever and ever about this. But just to keep it concise, we should not be looking vertically towards other people and what they're doing and what they're convicted by, but just straight up vertical of what you feel like you have to live for. And that is so hard, especially as missionary kids, when you look at everyone else and you're like, well, I feel convicted to do this, but you just feel convicted to like give $1.
Yeah.
Like, it's so wrong.
And that's why I we prefaced it. This is a growth journey because clearly we're still at the starting line of how to navigate this wisely and in a not rushed way. I don't think we should rush to an answer. We need to give ourselves grace in that area that
For
we
sure.
will for sure mess up. Anyway, although we could go on quite literally branching off into 500 different subsets of this topic, but we will spare you that time. Thank you so much for listening. We'll obviously continue this conversation in just different categories and different lights as we continue to process and grow from this and also enter into different communities, gain experiences and different perspectives through that. If we're still doing podcasting 10 years later, you never know. Just kidding. But anyway, thank you all for listening. We are on Spotify and on YouTube, and all our updates are on Instagram. Be on the lookout for more episodes there. Until then, bye.
Bye.